just about ready. There we go. All right, are you guys ready?
Yes, absolutely. How many participants do we have with us?
Currently, we have 19 people on total.
Good.
Okay, that's good.
Hi, everybody. I'm your host. My name is Chris Amundsen. You've probably seen emails from me being sent out for all the craziness that's going on. Today, we have a presentation called a Teacher's Toolbox to Standard-Based Grading by Mary McCarley. She's from She's from North Carolina, and Bart Zwires, he's from Minnesota. So go ahead and take it away.
Thanks so much. Again, my name is Mary McCarley, and I am the Health Education Content Specialist with Goodhart Willcox, and I'm also the co-author of their middle school health textbook. And I was a teacher for 15 years in Charlotte Mecklenburg schools as a high school health teacher. And now I provide professional development and training for our middle school and high school health titles, and I love presenting at conferences. So I'm really thrilled to be here with you guys today to present this session on a teacher's toolbox to standard-based grading. And hopefully you had a chance to see my session this morning, which was recorded, and it was 10 ways to create a skills-based health classroom. So in today's session, you'll be receiving strategies, ways to differentiate formative and summative assessments, all related to standard-based grading. So let's begin. First, I just wanted to point out that all the activities and assessments, since we are co-authors, all the activities and assessments that you do see today are in our middle school and high school health education program. You do have access to this presentation, so you'll be able to go back through and reference this PowerPoint to kind of continue to see those activities and assessments and the format that we use for standard-based grading. And at the end of this presentation, if you do want a free sample of our middle school or high school program, you will have an opportunity to sign up, and Bart can make sure that you have those resources to check out. So first, I just wanted to briefly highlight our award-winning author team. We have an amazing team of teachers. As you can see, many of us are Shape America Award-winning Teacher of the Years. And in today's presentation, all the activities and assessments that you see were either developed by myself, Mary McCarley, who's the middle school co-author, or Diane Farthing. And she's on the far right-hand corner. And she is our high school co-author, and she's also the 2020 Shape America Western District Teacher of the Year, and a phenomenal teacher when it comes to standard-based grading. So I just wanted to provide 4 quick points as to how standard-based grading can benefit both a teacher and students. So just 4 quick points. And then we'll dive in right and start looking at assessments and activities. So first, standard-based grading provides meaning to grades. Students understand why they receive each grade and the breakdown of how they did on each standard, rather than receiving a vague letter grade with no explanation. And also, it keeps both students and teachers accountable. And with specific learning standards from the beginning of class, the teacher knows what they are expected to teach. With the use of consistent formative assessments, teachers and students know how well they are doing on these learning targets and can adjust as needed to ensure proficient understanding by the end of course. Also, number 3, it does provide feedback, better feedback for improvement. And with grades broken up into different learning standards, students can immediately see which areas of learning they need to improve upon. Teachers can also use this information to improve instruction. If they see the majority of the class has a lack of understanding in one standard, they can focus on that standard more moving forward. And lastly, it provides information to differentiate instruction. And you're definitely going to see that differentiated today as I show you leveled assignments. And with learning standards and frequent formative assessments, the teacher knows which standards are at each level for which students are at each level for each standard. And with this information, they can differentiate instruction and give different leveled assignments to different groups of students based on proficiency level that they are at. And it also really allows those students who are of higher achieving students to extend and, to work within their ability level. So first, I'm going to provide some examples of formative assessments that I created for the middle school program. And these, you are going to see a level 1, 2, 3, and 4. And first of all, I created for so you have the 8 national health education standards, and under each standard, you have performance indicators. So for each performance indicator, which is a very specific indicator, for example, 4.8.1, apply effective verbal and nonverbal communication skills to enhance health. I wanted to create these like kind of small assessments, formative assessments for teachers and students to be able to measure this learning target or skill, depending on what the target is. And I figured there was maybe 2 options on how teachers were going to administer these assessments. Because if you have leveled assessments, 1 being emergent, 2 being developing, 3 being proficient, and 4 being extending, how do you decide where to start? So I figured most teachers are going to choose option 1. And option 1 is you have all students start at a level 3 proficiency. And you see how well they do, and are they proficient at this learning target or performance indicator. And based on how well they do, those students who do show proficiency, you provide them the option to extend. And if you are converting to a traditional grading scale, as you can see here, extending would be a letter grade or a 90 to 100 percentage. But those students who do not show proficiency or a level 3, they would have an opportunity to start back either at a level 1 or a level 2, depending on how well they did and how much kind of background knowledge they need to build themselves back up to that level 3 while giving them an opportunity to try level 3 again. However, option 2 is maybe there are teachers who want to start all students at a level 1 because these are very short formative assessments. Some of these you're going to see may just take 5 minutes or so for students to complete, and then build their way back up to proficiency and then have the option for extending. So let's kind of see what this looks like. So remember, these are the ones I did create for the middle school level. So this would be an example of level 1. So remember, all 4 of these levels are going to relate to performance indicator 4.8.1. And so level 1 is going to be very kind of basic background knowledge, making sure that students understand the terms and the meanings of the terms as it relates to effective verbal and nonverbal communication skills. And then level 2 is going to be a greater background knowledge of that learning target. So in this case, students are going to read the following scenario and determine whether the message being conveyed involves verbal or nonverbal. So in this column, they're going to state whether that scenario involves verbal or nonverbal communication, and also determine whether the message was effective or ineffective use of communication. So now let's build our way up to level 3. So a level 3 is going to, remember, that's going to be what demonstrates proficiency. And so this one, once again, is going to be for performance under 4.8.1. And students are going to read the following exchange between Juan and his parent. And in the space provided, they're going to rewrite Juan's you statements into I statements, conveying effective verbal communication. And then in addition, they're going to change his nonverbal communication to demonstrate effective nonverbal communication. So this would be kind of a very short, small, formative assessment to help teachers see, like, measure this performance indicator 4.8.1. Notice at the bottom of all of these, there's just a place where teachers can provide feedback for students. And for those students who have shown proficiency and can extend, I have a level 4 assessment, which the idea is that it's going to involve a little more real life application of extension. So in this level 4 assessment, students are going to have a meaningful conversation with a parent, a guardian, a trusted adult, someone in their lives. And I've given some examples, such as ways to manage stress, expectations of their family on dating or alcohol consumption or technology use. And they're going to be intentional during this conversation to demonstrate effective verbal and nonverbal communication. And then when they're finished with this conversation, they're going to have an opportunity to self-reflect. And these are the questions that, as you can see here, the students can self-reflect on this. And then the parent, guardian, trusted adult would sign the pledge, and the teacher could provide teacher feedback. So that was just one example for a performance indicator. And I always think it's helpful to have another example as well. And if you're just joining us, I've seen that there's been some people who are just joining us. I am the health education content specialist with Goodhart Wilcox and the co-author of their middle school health textbook. And with us today as well is Bart. I should have introduced Bart at the beginning. And Bart is the educational consultant for the state of Iowa. And he's also a huge advocate of healthy students. And we're providing examples of activities, assessments, ways of differentiating, all related to standard-based grading. So I have provided this PowerPoint to you so that you can go back if you're just joining us now and look at some of the activities to get ideas of assessments, formative and summative, and then also to be able to see like the format that we've used in our middle school and our high school to kind of get ideas on how you can do it in your classroom as well. So let's look at another example, and this is going to be another example of a formative assessment. So once again, now we're going to look at performance indicator 3.8.3, which is determine the accessibility of products that enhance health. So once again, providing that option, do you want to start all students at a level 3, which is proficient, and then kind of allow students to go up and down this ladder based on how well they do? Or do we want to start all students at level 1 and then kind of work their way up through the ladder? So once again, for the middle school level, using a very basic assessment scale, and then also for any teachers who are using a more traditional scale, always providing a conversion chart as well. So now let's look at a level 1. So remember, we're looking at determine the accessibility of products that enhance health. And so students are going to kind of reflect on some of the last products they've used that are health related. Was it easy for them to access? And in the space below, they're going to think about and brainstorm, factors that would make a health product easy, or in this column, difficult to access. And then based on that, so it could be money, it could be whether or not they have to buy this on the internet and then use a credit card that would be difficult to access. If they have transportation issues, obviously health products would be difficult to access. So they're going to spend some time brainstorming. Teacher provides feedback. This is really kind of basic background knowledge, just thinking about factors that allow health products to be accessible. Now, looking at a level 2, so we're going to have demonstrate a greater background knowledge of the learning target. So now students are going to read the following scenarios, and they're going to decide, is this product easy to access based on the scenarios? And then they're going to defend their response. And so getting kids to think a little bit more critically and considering the factors that they looked at a level 1. So now level 3. So remember, level 3 is going to demonstrate proficiency. And some of you guys out there may already just say, you may start your students at level 3, while others may want to start their students at maybe a level 1 or 2 and then build their way up to a level 3. And so with this level 3 assessment, they're going to examine, I guess is a good way, examine the following advertisement, and this one is on acne medicine, and they're going to decide based on this advertisement, how accessible would this health product be? And they're definitely going to need to read that fine print as well to determine the accessibility of it. And then the teacher has the opportunity to provide feedback. So now we want to take students a step further for those who have shown proficiency and are ready to move to a level 4, which is extension or extend the learning target. And in this case, they're going to think about health products that could enhance their physical, mental, and emotional or social health, maybe products that they've been interested in or interested in trying. And now they're going to research that product to determine the accessibility and how easy it would be to obtain it. So students would identify the product, provide a brief description, and then they're going to start looking at things like age restrictions and so on, and determine the accessibility. So based on your research and accessibility of obtaining product, do you think you would buy this, or ask your parent or guardian to buy this product for you, and how would it enhance your health? So just trying to get students to extend looking at products that they may be interested in the future, and then looking at accessibility. So those were two examples that I provided of formative assessments, both of which I created all of these for our middle school program. So in our middle school program, every performance indicator of the National Health Education Standards has this format of leveled 1, 2, 3, and 4 assessments as formative assessments. But every National Health Education Standard and National Sexuality Education Standard has a summative assessment. So think of it as a larger assessment. And so here's an example, and we always do provide, and I think it's important, especially if you are converting to a traditional grading scale, is for students to know that if I score a 15 or a 20, what does that mean? What kind of letter grade will I end up with if you are converting? I always wanted to provide teacher directions, and I thought this would be helpful as you guys are seeing the assessments, just to kind of see how I like to do it as an example. But I always want to provide an assessment. So think of it as a summative assessment for Standard 4, and Standard 4 is going to be the one that relates to interpersonal communication skills to enhance health and avoid or reduce health risks. So we have an assessment. Although I realize, and I'm sure you guys realize as well, that even though we create assessments, that doesn't mean that all students would be able to successfully complete this assessment, because we have multiple learning styles in our class. We have students with multiple comfort levels, especially as it relates to the National Sexuality Education Standards. So you want to respect those different student needs. So as I was creating these summative assessments, I always came up with the main assessment, and then the idea of an adaptation idea 1 and an adaptation idea 2. So let's look at those and what they may look like. So once again, we're looking at Standard 4 as it relates to interpersonal communication. This is going to be the summative assessment. And this is the main assessment. So with a partner, together you're going to plan and perform a role play that uses communication skills to enhance health and avoid or reduce the risks, health risks. And so together they're going to plan their story. Step 2, they're going to write their script, taking into consideration the bullet points, and they've already have looked at the assessment, the criteria, which are going to be based on the performance indicators of that standard. Step 3, they're going to practice the role play, and step 4, they're going to perform it for the class. So this is a great activity to really get students to work on that skill of interpersonal communication. However, this could be time consuming. And as we all know, as health teachers, is you only have so many days to cover all those standards and performance indicators, to provide content and also practice skill and reinforce skill. And so I understand that while this could be a wonderful a summative assessment, for a teacher who's trying to teach health in 9 weeks, there's a lot to cover. So we want to provide options. So here's adaptation idea 1. So rather than doing this in class, you could do the exact same summative assessment, but do it outside of class, whether with a friend, a sibling, even a parent. You plan the story, you write the script, you practice, and then you perform, and then the student would need to provide video evidence. The video evidence of them, not necessarily the parent or the sibling does not need to show the standard-based criteria, but they would need to provide video evidence of them. And then the other idea is, here's an adaptation idea 2. And this could be a little bit time-consuming as well, although I guess students could come in at lunch, or if you start students on a project, you could assess students one-on-one, but this is going to involve a one-on-one assessment with the teacher. And so for this one, the students, I would provide the students this ahead of time. So I would want my students to see all the different scenarios that they may be asked to respond to under the category of refusal and negotiation skills. And then same thing, because I would want them to practice ahead of time. And then also asking for help, which are going to be those performance indicators related to this standard. And so on the day, I may take a student in the hall or in the corner while other students are working on a different project-based learning assessment. And then I would choose the scenario. So they could see the scenarios ahead of time, but would not know which one they were going to be put in that situation. So allowing students or telling the students the scenario that they're in, and then allowing them to practice refusal and negotiation skills using effective verbal and nonverbal communication. So here's an example of a summative assessment for Standard 4 that is differentiated or provide an adaptation ideas to meet all students' needs. And remember, you could use the main assessment for half the class or something like that. While half the students are working on that, maybe you're working in small groups, catching students up or re-looping something previously, and maybe other students will eventually work on either adaptation idea 1 or adaptation idea 2. So let's look at another example. Here's another summative assessment, and this one is going to be for the National Sexuality Education Standards, Standard 6, which is going to work on goal setting to enhance health. Once again, providing that if you are converting to a traditional grading scale, providing that a conversion chart I think is important. And then once again, having the main assignment, adaptation 1 and adaptation 2, and we'll look at each of these. So remember, this is going to be related to students' sexual health, and then Standard 6, which is going to be goal setting. So this is the main assessment that I created, which is a goal vision board. And students are going to have to create this vision board and include within this vision board the following bullet points. And so this is having students reflect on their sexual health, in particular related to, you can see, imagine that you have committed to eliminating or reducing the risk of unintended pregnancy and STIs, because these are the performance indicators for Standard 6. And so students on their vision board, they're going to include the following criteria. And these are the same criteria that they'll be measured on in the assessment scale. And then there is reflection questions as well. So if this summative assessment did not meet the needs of your students, or you have some students who love to create and design, they might love a vision board, but then there's other students who maybe want to do an assessment similar to this, which is adaptation idea 1. So instead, they're going to come up with a SMART goal, and then from there, the action plan to eliminate or reduce the risk of unintended pregnancy and STIs. So you can see that the outcome is the same because you're getting students to, and you're measuring those specific criteria, which are those performance indicators, as in a summative assessment, but how a student doing it is going to do it is very different, or their final product is going to be different. So in this one, they're going to come up with their SMART goal, they're going to make an action plan, and then they would reflect on their action plan. So with adaptation idea 2, I figured that there are going to be some students who may not feel 100% comfortable doing an activity like this because it reflects on them, their desire to eliminate or reduce the risk of unintended pregnancy or STIs. And I really want to make sure that all students feel comfortable. So with adaptation idea 2, you can see that the format of the assessment is really the same as adaptation idea 1, but this time, rather than students talking about themselves and what they're going to do and their action steps, just to increase comfort level with students who may feel a little uncomfortable on this topic, they're going to now choose one of the following 2 scenarios. So now they're going to be discussing a character rather than themselves. So now that I've provided 2 examples of formative assessments and 2 examples of summative assessments, and those were all from our middle school program and the kind of format that I like to use, but I wanted to give you another, or I guess some additional summative performance tasks. And these are from our high school program. And these were actually developed by Diane Farthing, who I know I highlighted at the beginning. But I think she does a phenomenal job with standard-based grading and has done a great job of these performance assessments. So with all of her performance assessments, if you've been looking for ways to differentiate, she does always provide differentiation ideas for the summative assessment. So first, we're going to look at standard 4, which is going to be interpersonal communication with the focus on assertive communication. So this one is going to be differentiated by learning style. So for this performance assessment, students are going to demonstrate assertive and effective communication. They're going to read the following scenarios, and all 3 scenarios are going to be examples of like conflict, and they're going to have to use assertive communication to solve this conflict. So they're going to get to choose which scenario they want to use as their, whether their script or their role play. So they're going to have a choice in that. They're going to state their scenario, and then what communication style was used in the scenario. Now, based on the scenario that they've chosen, they're going to now decide, are they going to do option number 1, which is the scenario or script? So they're going to rewrite the scenario to show how they might respond using assertive communication style. Or do they learn by doing? Do they learn by talking? So we know this is an example of how it's differentiated by learning style. Students learn in all different ways. Some of them would rather write, while some of our students would rather do a role play and perform for the class. So the end product is the same, in that students are practicing responding to conflict using assertive communication and I statements rather than you statements. But how a student does it can be very different. And based on which option they choose, you always want students to have a kind of clear criteria on how they're being assessed. So as you can see here, our high school program still beginning, developing, proficient, and extending. And you can see very, very clear criteria for students and a clear criteria for teachers to measure that skill. And so this is if they use the script, or they decided to choose the script. And this would be rubric 2, is if they decided to do the role play as well. So if you've been kind of searching for assessment scales to help you assess student skill, I've hopefully provided, and throughout this presentation, even more assessment scales to help with that. So let's look at another example. So this is actually going to be a summative assessment for standards 5 and 4. So it's going to be related to responding to violence, but we're going to let students choose what skill they want to practice. Do they want to practice standard 5, which is decision making, or do they want to respond to this violence in practicing skill 4, interpersonal communication? So now here's an example of how this assessment is differentiated by skill choice for the student. Once again, students are going to have 3 scenarios, and they're going to read the following 3 scenarios, and they're just going to choose one, but all 3 are going to be related to violence. And then from there, students can either choose option 1, which is going to be the decision making, and they're going to go through this decision making process, as you can see here. And then continue to go through the steps of the decision-making process. Or do they want to choose option 2 and practice the standard 4 skill, which is going to be interpersonal communication? And then they would write a script determining what they would say to the person in this situation. And then they're going to use I statements. And they would write the script in the space. And then based on their choice, providing a clear assessment scale or rubric for that. And this was, this was option 1. I've tried to blow it up as big as I could so that you guys could see it on the screen. So this one was for students for option 1, decision making. And then this was going to be for option 2, script. And don't forget, in case you joined us late, you do have, I have provided this PowerPoint for you to go back and review these assessment scales and activities assessments. And that was just the second page. So I thought it would be valuable to provide some additional rubrics. You know, some of the skills are very hard to measure. So I thought that Diane Farthing, she did a really good job of coming up with assessment scales. And so I wanted to share some of these with you guys. And here's one related to advocating for health. And so if you have a project right now that's it's a summative assessment that has students advocating at their school or campaigning at their school, and you've been kind of searching for an assessment scale that's criteria specific, you may want to check this one out. Or I actually provided, this was one of the advocacy campaigns performance tasks that I included in our middle school program. So this was a small group advocacy campaign. And if at your school you like for students to advocate, and maybe you have some performance assessments you use, or maybe you've been searching for one or trying to come up with a format. So I was very intentional when I created this one, is to try to keep it as broad as possible so that a teacher could use this for advocating for healthy eating at their school, or maybe an anti-vaping campaign. So in small groups, they're going to choose a topic, and they're going to come up with a campaign topic, something that meets the needs of your school community, maybe something that students are passionate about. Then they're going to come up and they're going to do research. So they're going to research accurate, up-to-date, valid information about your topic that you've chosen. And they're going to come up with their research notes. Then they're going to reach out to faculty members, teachers, administrators at their school, and they're going to talk to them and find out what's currently being done at your school to address this issue. And they'll respond in the space. Then with step 3, they're going to come up with, and they're going to create a campaign goal. And so they're going to determine who the target audience is, the message, the why, and also goals. And now it's going to be time to create a product, because you're going to want to have something that you can campaign with or advocate at your school. So the criteria is the same. As you can see, the bullet points, or what I want on the product, is the same for all students. But I differentiated this by using a choice board. So I try to give students choice as much as I can. I think it increases their self-motivation, their personal investment, and it makes them feel like they have choice over, you know, the type of product that they can create. And so this is going to be differentiated by learning style. So whether they want to design a poster, create a series of social media posts, a video public service announcement for the morning announcements, or in the middle, I always include student choice, because but they do have to get permission from me. So now step 5, after they've created their product as a group, it's going to be time to start getting ready to launch your campaign. So students are going to get ready to launch their campaign, but before they launch it, they're going to respond to the following questions. Why is this the best product option for your campaign? What do you need to make your campaign possible? What is your timeline? And how will you determine success? And once students have had a chance to reflect on this and start to prepare to launch their campaign, they're now going to launch their campaign. And I know for many schools, they support like student group advocacy projects or campaigns at a school. But if your school does not support that, you may want to consider a health fair. And so having all your students come in at this designated time and set up, and allowing maybe students or even like family members, maybe during homeroom, that they can come in, and having a schedule that they can, students can highlight their campaigns. And then with step 6, they're going to reflect on their campaign. So were you successful in implementing a meaningful campaign? Provide a detailed response. What obstacles did you encounter, and how did you overcome these obstacles? And what did you learn from doing this campaign? So I just want to include a couple more assessment scales. Measuring refusal skills, I find can be really difficult. And I loved this assessment scale that Diane Farthing developed. So I thought that I would share it with you guys. And then active listening, that's another skill that I find that it's been difficult for me to measure. So here's another assessment scale that you might want to look at as it relates to active listening and showing support. So I figured there may be some questions in the chat box. So I wanted to end a couple minutes early to answer some questions and then also have a chance for Bart to say hello to you guys. But before I I do want to sum up and then I'll answer the questions. So I hope this presentation was helpful in providing you some strategies, also some ways to differentiate skills-based and standard-based grading, and also just providing you some examples of both formative and summative assessments. And as I mentioned, I am with Goodhart Willcox now. I've been outside of the classroom for, I guess, almost 2 years. And I do lots of training and professional development, but I still love to present as a teacher at conferences. And we do want to make sure if there's any teachers who are listening today, if you wanted a copy of our middle school or our high school program, and it is aligned with the National Health Education Standards and National Sexuality Education Standards. If you want to see our program and just kind of try it out, we do have a link that you can not click on, but you can just copy down this or take a picture of it and type it in, and it will, Bart will receive it, and that way he could send you the resources that you've requested. Or if you want to just email Bart directly, you could also email Bart directly, but this will kind of be easier for him to get the information that he needs to get you the resources. So I'm going to pause for just a second to see, Bart, if there are any questions in the chat box, or if you wanted to say a little bit as well.
Yeah, everyone, this is Bart. So if you have a question, feel free to ask the question or I'll put it in the chat box. That would be great too. One question, how often do you assess or recommend to assess your students? That's a question that came up.
Yeah, so, and that's why I was, some of us, as I've had classes as large as 42 and even 51, if you have a lot of students, then assessing all the time is going to end up creating a lot of work for the teacher. And that's why I did come up with that option 1 and option 2. As a teacher like myself, who does have high numbers of students, I don't think I would start all my students at a level 1 and build them up to extending. I may start my students at a level 3 and allow them to show proficiency as to decrease the amount of grading that I have. And, with a lot of these, the grading is not extensive anyways. And as students are working, you can kind of go around and quickly assess students. But depending on the topic that we're in, I don't give an assessment every single day. Sometimes it's once a day, sometimes it's every other day. Often there's small formative assessments. And then obviously at the end of a chapter, I would give a summative assessment. So I would say once in a while. I mean, sometimes it is every day, and then maybe sometimes it's every other day is probably how often I assess students. But some of my assessments are small, as you can see from my formative assessments. They're not very extensive, nor do they take a lot of time to assess. So I hope I answered that effectively. Bart, was there another question?
I'm not seeing any other questions at this point. One thing that I'd like to say too, with this, this is within a health education curriculum. Like Mary was saying, it's standards-based, it's skills-based. There are 2 to 4 content update lessons per year that are added over time. So really helping to keep the curriculum current and fresh. That's always a really big priority for health educators. And there are also parent-trusted adult engagement assignments as well. Engagement assignments where you can involve parents or trusted adults, with your students. So that's really important as well. Mary mentioned choice boards for activity. for activities. There's also Cornell-style note-taking ability and other things as well. So I did put a link in the chat box and also my email address, and it's on the screen as well. So my name is Bart, and I'm the Iowa educational consultant for, from Goodhart Wilcox. And, I've met with quite a few school districts throughout the state, either in person or over the phone. And obviously with the current, conditions, everywhere, I'm very comfortable as far as talking with educators, either over the phone, or if you want to see something online, more information on standards-based grading, or some of these examples that, Mary has been really nice to show us here today. I'm happy to do that. We can set up a go-to meeting where I can do an online meeting with you, and walk you through some of these materials and look at some more examples. So just let me know how I can help.
And then
Are there
also,
other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I wanted to point out that I think I said this very early on, but there was quite a few teachers that joined a bit later. I also did a recorded session for you guys, and it's on 10 ways to create a skills-based health classroom. And I think it was your 8 a.m. And it was recorded, so maybe if you missed it, you might want to go back. So if you're a teacher who loves like skills-based health education, performance assessments, project-based learning, looking for opportunities to engage families, I included all those activities and assessments that I've done for my 15 years of teaching in that presentation as well. Yes, they are in my our published middle school program, and some of the activities I used in there were also from our published high school program, but you still have access to see them and get ideas. Some of my best ideas came from going to conferences and watching teachers present and taking their ideas and kind of making it my own. And so I really hope from today's session that I've shared something with you that just kind of gets you thinking about how the things that you're already doing right now. If you have something that you're wanting to work on or think of a new way of doing it, I hope I've sparked an idea for doing that. And Bart and I are here to support you guys. If you have any follow-up questions or you'd like to chat, you're welcome to reach out by cell phone or by email. Are there any other final questions that anybody wanted to type in the chat box? Well, thank you guys so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I know our school district my two kids go to just decided yesterday that we are full remote. So I know it's a really difficult time for teachers and planning for the upcoming school year. So I truly hope, I wish you guys the best. And if we can be a resource for you or if we can help you out in any way, please reach out. Thanks so much, you guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mary and Bart. I just want to let everybody know that every video that is in this convention, whether it's live or pre-recorded, if you RSVP'd, I will send a link of the whole playlist to you either tonight or tomorrow. If you haven't RSVP'd, go into our convention site, go to the coming soon page and go ahead and sign up there, and I will get that to you tonight or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow, because I'm probably going to try to get some sleep tonight since last night I didn't. So thanks everybody for coming. Thanks again, Mary and Bart. Hope everybody can make it to a 10 o'clock Central or 11 o'clock Central Time session. And thank you.
Okay.
Bye. Thank you, guys.